Hello everyone, I welcome you to another video by Legacy IAS where we are going to talk about the much awaited and looked out for major event of 2023 where India will be hosting the G20 summit in India. Very soon, India is going to be taking over the presidency of the G20, and that is when a lot of responsibilities come into us, including the responsibility of hosting the G20 meeting. In this regard, India has come up with its logo, the own logo for this particular G20 meeting, and that is what is going to be our point of discussion today, where we're going to try and understand, decode what this logo is all about, what is the vision of the government in terms of introducing or bringing in this particular logo to the world on a platform which actually constitutes the largest of such groupings, one of the strongest and most politically powerful, economically developed countries of the world, making it a forum which the world listens to. So, on such a forum, when India is getting the presidency, hosting it, what is the significance of this particular logo? What does it mean for India? And what are the controversies that have basically arisen and the opposition criticizing it for a lot of reasons? All of that is what we're going to discuss in this particular video in the India's G20 presidency logo. Now, the event went on to such, it started with the fact that the official logo for India's G20 presidency was unveiled by the Prime Minister. It basically represented with four colors of the Indian national flag, all right, which comprising of the earth sitting on top of a lotus. So that is how we have the entire logo being created and presented to the world by the Prime Minister. Below the logo, that is the G20 logo, is written Bharat. We have Bharat written here in the Devanagari script. All right, so there is significance of everything that is being used here. Now, the theme of the G20 India's presidency is Vasudeva Kutumbakam, or one earth, one family, and one future. This particular concept is actually brought up or drawn from the Sanskrit text of the Maha Upanishads. So this is where we basically draw our source, and very important pointers is what exactly the logo is, the earth, the lotus, the colors involved, the title Bharat or the name of Bharat being written, not India, in Devanagari script, all right, and the theme, which is Vasudev Kutumbakam. Now, understanding firstly that how this logo basically came into picture, it was basically drawn upon from a lot of elements which were received. So there was an open competition which basically happened, and through this particular My Government app, My Gov website, this particular competition was brought open for the public. So this particular context received over 2000 submissions, and the whole idea behind it is public participation, Jan Bhagidari, all right, whereby government does not want to function in isolation. It says that we are a government of the public, and that is why through this public participation, the entire such logo and every such places where public participation is encouraged, one such example is deciding the logo. So based on the different entries which were received, finally this particular logo was curated. Now, understanding what is the rationale behind using this particular logo. Firstly, understanding that this particular logo is the one which is bearing the lotus, okay, as you can see in this image, and the theme of Vasudev Kutumbakam. Now, what Prime Minister Modi, the Prime Minister of the country, said that India is basically, it referred to India as the mother of democracy. And some references can be made, let's say, for example, in ancient India, how democratic principles have always been a part of Indian culture and society. All right, public participation have always been a part of India. So he said that India's efforts will be to ensuring that the whole idea of having like different worlds, especially in the current scenario where we're still talking of Cold War 2.0, and there's a first world of the Western led countries, and then the second world, the ones which are led by, let's say, present day Russia. So there's no concept of first, second, and third world. All right, he talks about Vasudeva Kutumbakam, which is basically that you have one earth and then there is one family, and we all have this one future. All right, so in instances like, say, COVID-19, these kind of systems, these kind of thought processes get reinstated even further. So, what Prime Minister had to say in this regard, that the world is going through the after effects of a disruptive, once in a century pandemic. All right, once in a century we've had this pandemic, and the disruptive effects are felt worldwide. The conflicts and the economic uncertainties continue. So, lotus as a symbol in the G20 logo is actually a representation of hope. Hope that in these difficult matters, in difficult times also, the lotus is still going to bloom. All right, so there's a lot of sense of hope, there's a lot of sense of reassurance, affirmation, and something that India is trying to do under its presidency, in spite of all the difficulties and challenges that the world is facing. This kind of a hope is what India is trying to bring to the world through this particular logo. We need to understand that why the lotus has been used. Of course, we know about the earth, that's where we live in, but why the lotus? Now, as far as lotus is concerned, it's really considered auspicious, very, very pure. All right, it is a symbol, a very important symbol of India's cultural heritage. The lotus has been used in very, very symbolic places like the Puranic heritage. All right, our entire belief system, our intellectual thought process, they've all been referred to and looked up to and symbolized through the lotus. In fact, to the extent where we have our goddesses of knowledge as well as prosperity, Shri Lakshmi ji and also Saraswati Ma, they have been seated on the lotus. In so a lot of symbolization have been referred to and given to the lotus in this regard. So basically, this type of concept of knowledge and prosperity, the shared knowledge whereby we can overcome the challenges that we face. So we're talking about, largely we're talking of the world coming together, symbols like multilateralism. All right, what India is trying to promote, where the entire world needs to kind of come together, have knowledge exchange, help each other, help them grow. Just like India tried to provide the Sanjeevani during the COVID-19 crisis and pull people out of the entire pandemic situation, right? The Make in India initiatives are meant not only for domestic purposes but also for helping the countries who are in need. Such kind of symbolism is being associated with the use of lotus here. So that is why the entire earth is placed on this symbol of lotus, on this symbol of shared knowledge as well as prosperity. The way in which our goddesses and have used a lotus in the ancient times, especially the 7 petals which have been used in the logo, are also very, very significant. They basically represent the 7 continents. So here we're just trying to show that all these 7 continents which are there, the entire world is kind of enveloped through this particular lotus. It's been symbolized through this particular lotus here. 7 is also the number which is universally understood through the language of music. So music is something which connects the world, irrespective of any kind of discrimination, any kind of adversarial situation. You have music kind of connecting the world in this regard. So in music, we're basically, the entire world is coming together and we're trying to promote the symbol of harmony through this particular logo and the 7 petals of the lotus. And each one of them and each note, just like each note of music has a special significance, has a different kind of sound. So each of these 7 petals representing the 7 continents have their own uniqueness to offer to the world. And we should kind of embrace these uniqueness that are there. So similarly, we have this G20 summit and this logo trying to promote harmony along with respecting the different diversities which come along with it. Also important are the colors which are used. Here we have, of course, the fact that India has a tricolor with the spokes blue and the chakra blue. So those are the colors which are used here. The idea is that the earth reflects India's pro-planet approach to life. It's a very symbolic statement which whereby you are trying to say that how you basically live in harmony. So this kind of an aspect of the earth is being represented through India. Also, the G20 logo is something which have drawn a lot of semblance, as I was just mentioning, to the Indian national flag. But in spite of all said and done, there have been a lot of criticisms from the opposition, particularly very starking one coming from the Congress, whereby we are looking at statements like Mr. Modi and BJP won't lose any opportunity to promote themselves shamelessly. What they're trying to show is that we are basically here, using Lotus as a symbol on such an international platform like the G20 summit, trying to promote their own electoral agendas, trying to promote, I mean, you could have used anything, but you instead using the Lotus. So BJP is saying that you are basically not respecting the Lotus, which is basically India's national flag. So, I'm sorry, national flower. So here the usage of, and that's such an important understanding and a rationale behind the using of lotus. But in spite of that, in spite of not recognizing that it is a national flower, what BJP is saying that they are trying to, kind of politicize the entire issue, and their justification is basically that lotus was actually declared as a national flower by the Congress government themselves. It was not firstly incorporated by the non-Congress governments. Also, this particular lotus has been used previously as well. It's not the first time that lotus has been used on international forums. The first time it was used was in 1983 during the summit of NAM. All right. Also, we had seen the use of lotus, as you can see in this image here, at the 2021 BRICS summit. So there have been multiple occasions where it has been used. Moreover, going back in time, during the freedom struggle of 1857, we had instances of revolutionaries holding the lotus in one hand and roti in the other. So there's a lot of symbolic reference to the usage of this particular lotus. And of course, going back to our traditions, whereby goddess Lakshmi, goddess Saraswati are the ones who have been using lotus. So basically, if you are criticizing the logo, you are indirectly criticizing the Hindu tradition. That is the rebuttal, that is the retaliation, that is the counter, that, or rather the reply that the government has towards all of these criticisms. Now, it's not that India is the only one who has used something of a similar logo for this G20 meetings, similar to whatever being used, let's say, by their party or by the country for that matter. The first time when this logo was unveiled in 2010, then we had Canada and the red Canadian maple leaf also being used. So the Liberal Party was also someone who kind of using this particular logo. Also, during this time of 2017 and 18, we had Argentina presiding over the G20 meeting. That is where we see a lot of semblance of the colors that were being used for the G20 logo. Also, during 2018 and 19, when Japan was heading over the entire G20 presidentship, that is also when there was a similarity in the symbols that were used, from a stylized chrysanthemum to basically a stylized cherry blossom. So this kind of a similarity is not something uncommon. It has been used in the past by several other countries. So it's not that India is doing for the very first time. But towards the end, we also need to understand that in totality, what we are looking at is that the logo and the theme altogether, they are talking of or trying to promote a much more just and equitable society, much more just and equitable growth for all, not disparities, have a global transformative action so that ultimately we live in much more cleaner, greener, and bluer future. right? So have sustainable development, make sustainable as well as responsible choices so that you are not only able to promote individual lifestyle but also national development. Also, this kind of the G20 summit coincides with India celebrating its 75th year of independence, and we're very close to completing 100 years of our future, or of India's since India's independence. So it is very historic as to when the presidentship has basically come to us and what we're trying to make out of it. So a lot of hopes, a lot of people looking, the world looking at India now, especially through the G20 summit. So we all have to wait and watch how this entire event unfolds. So I hope you have enjoyed this discussion. Let me know by liking this particular video, share it with those who still have confusion with regards to the G20 logo, and subscribe for future videos by Legacy IAS.